Greetings all, and welcome to the 49th episode of TM Technical Movement. For today, we'll be looking at the Rapid Spin and Hidden Power attacks, and the Belly Drum, Swagger, Attract, Sleep Talk, Pain Split, Encore, Baton Pass, and Psych techniques. Much as the name suggests, the Rapid Spin attack involves rotating the user's body at high speeds in an effort to destroy any bondage or field-damaging weapons in the vicinity. The Rapid Spin attack itself is not inherently designed to actually inflict damage, and therefore only inflicts a tiny amount of true damage merely as a result of the user coming into direct contact with an opponent. The true purpose of the move is to alleviate the bonds of binding attacks and field-altering moves. As it turns out, moves like Bind, Clam, Fire Spin, and even Leech Seed are easily destabilized and broken if the user is able to somehow produce enough rotational motion and friction to break the hold. This is usually done by rapidly spinning their bodies, which in turn throws off anything that is physically bound to them and produces air or even water currents near them that destabilize any elemental bind that may be placed upon them. Interestingly enough though, this also proves to be a great way for clearing the battlefield of projectiles or objects that otherwise would cause debilitating effects to anything that dares to step onto the ground, such as spikes or sticky web, and further accelerates the bodily movements of the user, raising the speed stat every time it is successfully used. This alone does not make the attack worth relying on for much in battle, but for defensive Pokémon that are otherwise vulnerable to the effects of binding moves, this weak strike can easily make life difficult for opponents and prevent them from utilizing more powerful moves without losing the benefits of their binding attack. Due to the high rotational speeds used in the move, it is essentially impossible to physically counter or directly dodge the Rapid Spin attack. Armor can, however, help reduce negative damage dealt by the attack, and moves that reduce the opponent's speed stat can help counter its secondary effects. The Rapid Spin attack is far too weak to be of much concern in any battle, and is unlikely to see much action outside defensive trainers. Even so, the fact that the move can easily alleviate the bonds of binding attacks makes it the perfect weapon for countering anti-defensive tactics, and should be countered by relying on moves that focus on direct damage alone rather than recurring damage. As the name might suggest, the Hidden Power attack involves generating and striking with a powerful wave of energy derived from the user's own internal strengths and weaknesses. The Hidden Power attack is one of the most misunderstood moves recognized and continues to baffle the minds of trainers and scientists alike to this very day. The Hidden Power attack is designed to enable the user to use his own unique physical and mental status to launch a bizarre energy wave of uncertain composition and form. Aside from that, however, there is very little that can be said with certainty about the move. While the damage the attack does is set up to a relatively moderate value, the elemental type of the move's damage is seemingly dependent upon the user's IV values, which is a difficult trait to work with because they are essentially locked in place from birth. What is known though is that the move is only recognized as a normal type attack because it is effectively a mixture of energy forces from nearly all other types, with the inexplicable exception of the Fairy type. Its definitive properties are completely random and dependent on the overall combat performance of the user. This can make the Hidden Power attack both completely useless because of the uncertainty of its actual function, but also a potential boon, as it can enable the user to use a type of attack that they otherwise would be completely forbidden from using, like a Fire-type Pokémon using a Bug-type attack, and is additionally affected by items like King's Rock. Moreover, Silco managed to discover that if converted into a TM, the Hidden Power attack could effectively be learned naturally and artificially by more Pokémon than nearly any other move in existence. Not surprisingly, they took such a great opportunity with Due Vigilance and released the move as TM10 within their second generation line of TMs, from which it maintained enough popularity among trainers of all types to be reproduced within many subsequent generations, only losing its status in the 8th generation line due to issues controlling the otherwise random powers it could awaken. Due to its unique attributes, there is no way to directly counter or dodge the Hidden Power attack, and any and all resistance the armor plays will be dependent upon the actual type of the move when used by a specific Pokémon. The Hidden Power attack is random enough that it probably won't be used by many beginning and intermediate trainers, but for professionals looking to spring a nasty surprise on opponents, this move can ultimately become a death trap if you have a good idea of what type the attack is, which is something that you should key in on if the opponent favors it as well. As one might surmise from its name, the Belly Drum technique involves beating one's stomach with fury and determination in an attempt to rile up the user and significantly increase its physical power. The Belly Drum technique is basically an all-for-nothing move that exchanges the user's personal health for the sake of dealing tremendous amounts of physical damage. The user of this technique effectively uses its own physical strength to repeatedly beat its stomach area forcefully and vigorously in order to rile itself up and increase its overall physical capabilities. This intense act is not well understood because of how effective it actually proves to be, but when used, a belly drum technique will effectively reduce the user's HP by 50% of its maximum amount from self-injury and strain in working up such a fervor, while raising its attack stat, regardless of how low or high it is, up to its maximum value in battle. Despite the fact that it can effectively decide the outcome of a match if the user is already weak or up against an offensively gifted opponent, the move can easily convert a weak physical attacker into a considerable menace and make those already offensively gifted nearly indestructible, a trait that makes it a great move to have around for the limited species able to learn it. Attacks and techniques that raise a Pokemon's defense stat or lowers an opponent's attack stat are highly recommended for dealing with the belly drum technique, as it's just quickly depleting whatever low energy the opponent has left after using this move. In essence, the swagger technique involves the user rolling up an opponent in such an infuriating manner that it confuses them and simultaneously increases their physical strength. The swagger technique is one of the most unorthodox and perhaps misunderstood moves known to exist, if only because its purpose is essentially double-edged to the extreme. The entire purpose of Pokemon using the swagger technique is to infuriate the opposition in such a bizarre manner that it effectively confuses them, usually by repeatedly taunting them with one's body or mannerisms in order to make them lose their capacity to reason. In doing so, however, the move also manages to send them into an extreme rage and critically raises their attack stat, about twice as much as normal. This is, however, the whole point of the move. When confused, a Pokemon that accidentally inflicts damage on itself does so on the basis of its physical defense and attack stats. By raising the opponent's attack stat, this move ensures that the damage done by the confused state is much greater than normal. Sadly, this also means that any successful physical attacks the opponent uses will also be intensified, and even then, it cannot be said that a swagger technique will actually work every single time. Still, its chances of seriously messing with the opposition beyond the limitations of the confused status condition are immense, a feature that Silph found great promise in when it released the move as TM34 within their second generation line of TMs. A lack of sales led to them discontinuing the move afterwards, but a recent resurgence in the move's popularity led them to reinstate it as TM87 within their 4th through 7th generation lines, only to be discontinued again and then briefly reinstated within the recent Sinnoh Special Edition set, gaining much popularity among defensive tacticians over time, even as it was removed once more in their 8th generation line. Fairly agile Pokemon, as well as moves, items, and abilities that either cure or prevent confusion, are highly recommended for countering the swagger technique. As one might expect, the attract technique involves using one's cute charm and appearances in combination with a propelled energy compound to infatuate the opposition. The attract technique is designed to use the natural attraction organisms have towards members of the opposite sex to their advantage, regardless of whether or not the two species can actually breed. In effect, the attract technique involves releasing heart-shaped bursts of energy towards the opposition while acting cute or in a manner that would otherwise be deemed physically appealing. These bursts of energy are designed to infiltrate the opponent's nervous system upon making contact and instantly disrupt their cognitive thinking skills in such a way as to make them fall head over heels for their opponent, potentially aided by some sort of pheromone-laced aroma for good measure. The infatuation that results from the move is only temporary and will wear off the moment the opponent is switched out or otherwise leaves the battle, but while in this condition, the target will be unable to attack 50% of the time and instead will just spend their time staring aimlessly at the object of the new affection. As one might expect, this move has no effect on Pokemon of the same sex, and is absolutely pointless against Pokemon without genders to begin with, but considering it always works under normal circumstances when used properly, the attract technique is a devastating move that just about any species of Pokemon can use effectively in battle. It was this trait that led Silph to release the move as TM45 within their second generation line of TMs, from which tremendous popularity enabled it to be reproduced within almost all succeeding generations, including the recent Sinnoh Special Edition set, finally becoming TM31 in the 8th generation line as a numerical change, before it was ultimately discontinued in the 9th generation line. Items and abilities that either cure or prevent infatuation are highly recommended for countering the attract technique, as is simply switching out for a different Pokemon or using a Pokemon of the opponent's gender. In effect, the sleep talk technique involves user utilizing its brain functions while asleep to attack with a move randomly selected from those it knows. The sleep talk technique is similar to the metronome technique in that it involves the user utilizing what little psychic power it has to use a move chosen at random. The main difference is that the move can only choose from those known by the user, with the exception of dual phase attacks and a few other specific moves, and it only works while the user is asleep. While a Pokemon is asleep, what and if they dream is highly dependent upon their experiences through the day and life in general. The sleep talk technique uses the subconscious as a direct tool during the dream state by converting sound and touch into visual receptors that allow the subconscious to grab a hold of the surrounding reality. In short, the technique allows the user to dream itself into the reality it already is in to fight the opponent in both the dream and real life. Because the move is generally known by Pokemon that do not have natural access to psychic powers, of course, the technique is imperfect and the user is unable to fully control what moves it uses in battle. Nonetheless, it is a great technique for avoiding many of the detriments associated with sleep and can certainly help alleviate the stress this status condition would otherwise cause. It was for this reason that Silph decided to release the move as TM35 within their second generation line of TMs, but little popularity eventually doomed its usefulness. A second attempt was made on the move as TM82 within the company's fourth generation line of TMs, but the same issue eventually caused it to be discontinued for a second time. Yet another resurgence in popularity led the move to be released as TM88 within the company's 6th generation line, and its continuation into the company's 7th generation line, and both conversion into TR27 for the first line of TRs, and reinstatement as TM82 within the recent Sinnoh Special Edition set, and TM70 within the 9th generation line, seems to suggest that it might stick around for a little while this time. Due to its unique attributes, there is no way to directly counter the effects of the sleep talk technique. Much as the name might suggest, the pain split technique involves using either spiritual or psychic energy to combine the current energy levels of two targets and then redistribute the health 50-50. The pain split technique is not well understood due to the limited number of Pokemon able to use it naturally, but it is nonetheless a potentially lethal move in practice. In effect, the act of the pain split itself involves establishing a spiritual or psychic connection between the user and another nearby Pokemon, and then using that link to mentally combine the current energy reserves of both parties. When the link is then severed, both parties receive 50% of the combined health back. Despite its simple function, the pain split technique is a complicated move because its effectiveness depends upon two very important variables. The most obvious of these is that Pokemon with low health that use this technique while their opponents have higher health will end up recovering some energy and dealing damage to the opponent at the same time, though this can backfire in some cases. The second, less obvious variable is the actual amount of HP a target can possibly have, as Pokemon with lower maximum HP stats will benefit from the move more than those with higher HP stats, and this factor tends to backfire even more than the previous one. Even so, when used properly, the pain split technique can easily render a powerful opponent weakened and primed for a finishing blow in a heartbeat, and in turn should be feared extensively, which would help explain why it is converted into TM202 for Silph's 9th generation line of TMs. Due to its unique attributes, there is no way to directly counter the effects of the pain split technique. As one might imagine from its name, the Encore technique involves encouraging the opponent so much in the efforts of its last move that it repeatedly uses the move an additional 3 times before stopping. The Encore technique is essentially designed to mess with the opposition by using their pride against them. The user of an Encore technique uses its wits and charm to encourage the opposition and make it feel like its last move was so spectacular that it should be performed again for all the world to see over and over. If needed, a small bit of applied energy may be used to further relax the target and enhance the move's effectiveness. Regardless, anything hit by this technique successfully will become so proud of itself and confident of its abilities that it will continue to use the move it last used an additional 3 times, even if it has no effect, as in the case of some techniques and healing moves, before they finally figure out the ruse and give up the Encore. This move might only be good at wasting the opponent's stamina, otherwise preventing them from striking with an effective move when they have the opportunity, but this can more than be enough time to make things far easier for struggling trainers and give them a chance to mount an offensive assault and potentially decimate their competition, which explains why it was made into TR30 for Silph's first line of TRs and TM122 for the 9th generation line of TMs. The only catch is that the move will fail on a Pokemon that last transformed or used a copy-based technique and will effectively force them to use Struggle if this move is followed by a successful Disable technique. Due to its unique attributes, there is no way to directly counter the effects of the Encore technique aside from switching out for another Pokemon. In effect, the Baton Pass technique involves user transferring any volatile status ailments, substitutes, perfect shot modifications, and temporary stat changes to a waiting Pokemon in a trainer's party before switching out for them. The Baton Pass technique is not well understood in terms of its execution and function, despite the fact that a decent variety of Pokemon can learn naturally, but its effects are more than apparent. And using a Baton pass technique, a Pokémon establishes a weak psychic or even spiritual connection with another Pokémon in the user's team and uses that temporary link to transfer the effects of any volatile status ailments, substitutes, perfect shot modifications, and stat changes to the waiting Pokémon before forcing them to come out of the capture device so the user may return to its own. This move generally has little effect outside of helping an otherwise weak and battered Pokémon recover a bit, but when set up properly, this move can help turn defensive Pokémon into unbreakable walls, and offensively gifted Pokémon into unstoppable weapons of mass destruction faster than the opponent can even react, oftentimes setting the stage for the rest of the battle, which might help explain why it was made into TR29 for Silphco's first line of TRs, and TM132 and the 9th generation line of TMs. Due to its unique attributes, there is no way to directly counter the effects of the Baton Pass technique. In essence, the Psych technique involves the user hypnotizing itself in order to mimic any and all stat changes that have occurred in the opposition. The Psych technique is a fairly specialized move that, just as noted, allows the user to use any natural hypnotic abilities it might have to take any changes the opponent has undergone and equal them. While using a Psych technique, the user effectively hypnotizes itself into achieving these stat changes in order to match the opponent's performance in battle specifically. This move can help trainers that are stuck facing opponents to utilize stat changes to their advantage, but the fact that the move will effectively have no effect if nothing has happened and will equally copy negative stat changes can make the move dangerous to use unprepared. Even so, its practical applications in battle are immense, a trait that Silphco recognized early on when they decided to release the move as TM9 within their 2nd generation line of TMs. Although complaints over how unfair the move could be eventually doomed to discontinuation, a recent resurgence in popularity led to the move being reinstated as TM77 within the company's 4th through 7th generation line of TMs before being discontinued again, only to once more be reinstated as part of the recent Sinnoh Special Edition set and TM203 within the 9th generation line of TMs, much to the applaud of the public. Due to its unique attributes, there is no way to directly counter the effects of the Psych technique. That's it for now, but look forward to the next set of moves here on TM Technical Movement. Thank you all for watching this video. It is a great pleasure to share with you all the fruits of my research and all the positives it gives to understanding the wonderful creatures we call Pokémon and how their powers and behaviors function in their world. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more work like it, please give a like, comment, and or subscribe to the channel so you can get regular notifications on when new content is being uploaded. You can also find links to my DeviantArt page, Patreon, and Discord server in the description below. Please, join me on this road to seeing what the world of Pokemon has to share with us, and the many mysteries and wonders that keep us all coming back for more.